What kind of emotions and kind of thoughts were running through your head as you were given the medal, as you finished the race that day?
Well, when we finished the race, I think the main emotion was just complete shock. We went into the race hoping that we could get the bronze, because the Americans and the Jamaicans are just sort of so far ahead, and it's kind of a competition to be the best of the rest. So we tried to get the bronze, but then actually sort of getting it and actually sort of finishing third was just a massive shock. And so many emotions. We were obviously really happy, and went on our lap of honour, and I could see my family in the crowd, which was lovely as well. And then I think once it sort of started to sink in slightly when we got our medal, about an hour or so later I think it was, I just started crying. There's sort of several photos and clips of me on the podium just sort of in tears, because it's just sort of a relief, happiness, all that sort of stuff. It was a really sort of surreal experience.
To what extent would you say that being at BGS inspired or influenced you to choose that path?
The sport at BGS played a massive role in my growing up. I wanted to do all the different sports that I could, so I played in the hockey teams, netball teams, athletics in the summer season, tennis, things like that. So I tried to take part in as much as I could, and the PE staff, when I was here, were so supportive in that, and the school itself was supportive, not only in my sport at the school, but my sport outside of the school as well. So they were really supportive and sort of pushed me, and sort of could see possibly that I had a sporting talent, and the staff particularly were very supportive in me, and sort of kind of pushed me to perhaps pursue athletics a bit further.
And would you say, in terms of guidance, in terms of career advice, that the school was pretty influential?
Yeah, definitely. We had sort of career talks fairly regularly, I think. I mean, it was quite a long time ago, so I can't remember exactly. But we had several people coming in to talk to us about what they do for a living, and they ranged so dramatically from the types of careers that they were in, sort of sporting to business to maths, all that sort of stuff, to try and cater for everyone, which was really interesting actually, because I think when I was sort of looking at careers and what to study at university, for me it was either doctor, teacher, nurse, things like that, and having sort of people come in that do slightly more unusual jobs was really interesting for me. Sort of made me think about things that I possibly didn't know about before. Mr. Scott, Miss Ripley was very supportive of me and sort of ran our hockey teams. Miss Ryan, which I think is now Miss Dixon. So they were all lovely and really supportive, and sort of are still so sort of 7 years after I've left, sort of following me and keeping in touch, which is lovely.
You obviously have quite a strict training regime, I'm guessing. How does that differ day to day? As in, when you're building up to an event like the Olympics, obviously last year, is that a lot more intense than it is now?
I train 6 days a week, so I do 2 gym sessions, 3 track sessions, and a bike session a week. And that stays the same pretty much all the way throughout the year, but what I do within those sessions changes slightly. So this time of year in the gym, I'll be lifting much heavier weights, whereas when I start to taper off and get closer to my racings, I'll lift lighter weights, but I'll try and do it quicker to sort of get that power. On the track, this time of year, it's the whole time of year, because we're doing longer stuff. We're doing a session might include sort of 6 300s with 2 minutes recovery. So you'll finish your 300, pretty much walk back to the start and go again, and do that sort of 6 times, where leading sort of up into a race, I might do 1 300, have half an hour rest, and then do another one, and that'll be my session done. So they sort of change quite differently as I get closer to my races. But this is the sort of time of year that everyone hates, because it's not fun.
So
My training session itself will probably take 2 to 3 hours, and then there'll be sort of recovery, so I might get a physio, I might get a massage, get in the ice bath, things like that. So I could be at the track for sort of 4.5 hours, but then I've got the rest of the day. I do currently have a job, so I do work as well part-time, so at the moment when I finish training I then go off to work. but I mean, social life, you have to balance it. Today I was in the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning, so I wasn't out last night, sort of at Halloween parties and doing all that sort of stuff. But that just sort of it's part of the job, if you like. It is essentially a job, and I have to sort of think that I can't be sort of out till 5 in the morning when I've got to be up at 7 to get to the gym. So yeah.
How well supported do you feel funding-wise? Do you think that you can get by with what you're going on? Do you? Is it like a struggle?
So I was on funding for 2013 and then got kicked off it. So for 2014, 2015 and 2016 I wasn't a funded athlete. So I had to support myself, hence getting a job.
Yeah.
Luckily this year for 2016 I found a personal sponsor who sort of believed in me, if you like, and tried to support in that way. But funding, if you're lucky enough to be on funding, there's various different levels. So there's like podium funding and then development funding. If you're on sort of the top couple of levels, you can, I mean, it's not a lot. When you compare it to sort of football and rugby, I'm sure as well, it's not sort of a massive amount, but you could live off it. The lower levels, it's slightly harder because the sort of financial benefits differ depending on whatever level you're on. The medical support's all the same. So if you're on funding, the money that you get given is basically just your living expenses, because all your medical support and things like that is free, which is good, which makes a massive difference. But anything else, you just sort of, so it kind of just depends what level you put on as to whether it sort of helps and whether you need to sort of look elsewhere as well.
Obviously, BGS are very influential and stuff and supportive, but what other support do you get? So were you part of the athletics club, for example?
Yeah, so when I was at school, my main sport in fact was tennis. So I didn't really focus on athletics until I was probably sort of year 11, sixth form, I think. But I was part of an athletics club, I think pretty much throughout my whole time anyway, so I just sort of turned up in the summer and just did a couple of races for them, but didn't really train. And they were great. They were always, they could sort of kind of see that I was a natural at running, sort of wanted to get, being a girl as well, wanting to get me involved. But at the time, because I was sort of doing all the sports at school and doing tennis as well, I just didn't have time. But they were sort of always lovely. And to be honest, even when I first started at sort of, I was doing like indoor athletics probably about sort of age 7 to 9, something like that. And the coach that I first started with there is still at the club today, sort of doing exactly the same thing with the same sort of 7 and 9-year-olds, which I think is just amazing. And he was sort of like, I can remember his coaching sessions vividly as well. So if he can sort of have that sort of influence on me, and I've sort of gone on to greater things as a senior athlete, sort of hopefully when those sort of 7 and 9-year-olds as well that he's currently coaching will go on and do the same.
Do you think that you feel quite sort of pressure as an athlete with your funding being cut? Do you think that that sort of adds to like the pressure of having to do well? And do you think it's like a good or a bad thing?
I don't think I felt pressure when my funding was cut. I think you almost feel more pressure when you get given funding, because then you sort of think, right, well, I've got to do well. I've got to do well to stay on funding. I've got to prove that they made the right decision to fund me, and so that's sort of the worst bit. If you get kicked off, then essentially, like, I almost quite liked it, although the financial support would have been helpful. I could just do completely my own thing. I could see my own physios. I could do my own. I didn't have to sort of be. I didn't have to sign a contract and do everything. They don't sort of rule me, if you like. So it wasn't. Pressure wasn't too bad. When I got kicked off, it was more the fact that sort of pressure of, because family sort of then start to help out and support and things like that, and so I don't want to let them down, and I sort of want to prove that they were right to believe in me, and same with my coach as well. But I certainly think more pressure once you get put on to try and stay on.
Yeah. Have you had the same coach the whole way through time? Or?
No, so when I was at school, I trained at Bath University and had a coach there. Then I went off to Loughborough University and obviously moved coaches there. And then when I finished at Loughborough, I came back to Bath, went back to my initial coach kind of thing, and then I've now sort of left him and gone back to my coach that I was with at Loughborough. So I've kind of like flipped between the two. Yeah, so I've had about two main ones, if you like. But no, they were both great and sort of worked for me at the time. But yeah.
What about psychology? Do you get a lot of psychology support?
Psychology support, no. You do if you're on funding. I mean, I'm sort of much more along the sort of physiological side of things rather than psychology, so I didn't really get involved with psychology much at all. But then when I started at my job, one of the guys I worked with did a bit of sports psychology on the side, and so I started talking to him, and he thought, actually, I think this could be really useful, because when I first started the 400 metres, I did used to psych myself out, and I used to have panic attacks, and I didn't sort of believe that I would be able to do it. So I thought, actually, I think this could be really useful, just not necessarily to sort of go through a psychology process, but just to sort of sit down and chat to someone who's not your coach, who's not your parent, and things like that. Someone's completely different but has a sort of psychology mind to talk to, and actually this year I think it made a massive difference. So I'll probably look to continue with that in the future as well.
What's your job at the moment as well?
I work at Park College.
Can I ask a cheesy one, like a Hello Magazine one? When you were in Rio, who were you most excited to bump into?
To be honest, I didn't really bump into that many people. We kind of just sort of were in our little accommodation block, would walk to the food hall and then walk back to our accommodation hall, and that was pretty much our life for 2 weeks. So we kind of, it was sort of whoever you saw in the dining hall. So I saw Simone Biles in the dining hall, but I didn't sort of have a chance to talk to her. And then with the Team GB lot, it was kind of like whoever you bumped into when you stood by a lift for half an hour trying to get up to your room. So I didn't sort of see, I'd like to see Andy Murray. Saw a few of the cyclists. But to be honest, not many. But
So what about out now then, when you've done your red carpets and things?
Bridget Jones's premiere was pretty cool. So we saw
Patrick
the cast of
Dempsey.
Bridget. Yeah,
A
exactly.
little bit of Patrick.
Few metres away from Patrick Dempsey was pretty exciting, and Renee and people. So that was cool.
And the Palace?
Yes, yeah, the palace. I forget all these sort of
Yeah,
things.
did you shake hands with Harry?
Harry was one. I spoke to the Queen, Prince Philip, Wills, and Kate. Harry, but because they sort of chatted to us for quite a nice duration, they didn't have time to sort of all meet everyone. So
what sort of questions did they ask you then? I'd be interested
they were just sort of asking.
Was it small talk or was it actually kind of?
Some of it was small talk. So with the Queen, we were all sort of like, we didn't want to speak out of turn, so we just sort of stood there waiting for her to speak to us, because that was nice. And then Prince Philip was sort of chatting away to us, but sort of was, Prince Philip's like all over the place. And then he just said to us, "I think we're all mad," and just walked off. That was funny. But yeah, and then Kate had a proper conversation with us, because she's sort of a bit younger and understands, and down to earth. So that was really nice.
Can you remember what she spoke to you about?
To be honest, I can't actually remember. I think she was just talking to us about our training, whether we're back into training now and looking to the next Olympics, and she was just sort of like saying how she had been watching it all and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's a real moment.
I bet.
What's been your highlight since coming back from the Olympics? Do you think there's been one thing which has stood out to you?
The Team GB celebrations were pretty cool. So up in Manchester, we did like an open bus tour, and then had a like sort of reception celebration in the evening, and then got our own train down to London, then basically did the same the next day. So that was sort of 2 days of fun, pretty much. And it was nice as well that everyone got back together. That was the first time we've all been back together since the Olympics. And the Paralympics were involved in that as well. So it's the first time as well the Olympics and Paralympics have been together. So that was really nice. And sort of nice celebration as well, because then it just relives the whole moment again. So it's nice because you come home and sort of back to work the next day, and back down to earth, and then it's nice to do things like that and sort of relive the moment again. So things like that have been pretty cool. And then the premiere and then BBC Sports Personality in a couple of weeks' time and things like that. That you don't when you win a medal, you don't even think about those sorts of stuff. So it's a nice little extra that you get since coming back.
When you came home from the Olympics, how did you sort of get back to normal after?
To be honest, I struggled a little bit. So I came back and was sort of still on sort of the big hype of Rio and all that sort of stuff. Came home, pretty much unpacked all my stuff, packed again, and sort of a couple of days later I was off on holiday. And then came back from holiday, and a couple of days later I was back to work. So I sort of, it was weird. So it was, and we didn't really know sort of what to feel, and then a few days later I was back in training, and that's when I sort of really struggled, because everyone else at that point was on their break and sort of off on holiday, and I'd been on holiday, come back, and then was back in training, and I sort of felt like I still wanted to have fun and still wanted to enjoy the hype of the Olympics, but everyone's back in their training now, so it's much better. But at this time, sort of getting back into normal life as such was a bit challenging.
Do you think? Like, so obviously it was a relay team. Do you guys train together often, or what happens?
No, not really. I mean, we're all, because although we're in a relay on that day, we're also doing individual 400s as well, so we all train completely separately, and then we'll probably have 4, maybe 5 relay practices a year. So we'll get together for a year and do a few sort of we'll have meetings and talks and discussions and things like that, and then also training sessions as well. But to be honest, we don't really sort of do, it's not like sort of a football team all getting together on a Thursday and doing a session like that. We just sort of train as individuals, come together a few times a year, and then expect to sort of try and do a few races as well and hope that it goes well, pretty much. But it's good fun. I mean, luckily, sort of all the 4x4 girls get on pretty well, so there's sort of no issues in that respect in the team. But it's good fun, and it's nice when we get together for those relay meetings that everyone's together and sort of get to catch up and all that sort of stuff. It's really nice, but we don't really do training as such together.
When you ran your relay, do you completely zone out, or can you remember what was going through your head in your stretch?
Kind of. I can remember the first sort of 100 metres, because that was sort of all the hustle and bustle, and everyone's getting sort of cut up here, there, and everywhere. But after that, you kind of just get in your little zone and your own little world, and then sometimes I'll finish a race and I won't have a clue what's happened. Other times I'll finish a race and I'll read to my coach, right, yeah, that bit is where I went too slowly, or I attacked too late around that top bend, and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes I can come away and think, no, I know exactly what I did wrong or what I did well. Other times I'm like, I have no idea what I did. So yeah,
So can you remember for that leg then?
That leg, I can remember like the first 100 metres, and then that's pretty much it. And then maybe the last 40 when I realised that I was going to stay in 3rd place. But other than that, not a lot really. No.
Was it a record time for you guys as a team, like heavily quicker?
We had actually been quicker. It's interesting because relays can change, they can be so tactical.
Yeah.
So if you get a clean run, so if you don't have sort of anyone in front of you or anyone really behind you, and you can just run your own race, and it will tend to be a lot quicker. Whereas if you're sort of getting cut out all the time and people are overtaking, then you've got to sit back and then you've got to overtake, and it's sort of all stop-start, then it tends to be a lot slower. So when you get to championship races like that, the time kind of just goes out the window, and it's all about how you run the race and how you run the lap that you're given and the leg that you're given, and things like that. Because sometimes as well, some athletes like to chase, so some athletes will prefer to get the battle, say, in 4th, because they know that if they have to chase someone down, they'll run a lot better than if they're the person that's being chased.
Yeah.
Christine, for example, is one of those. She much prefers to be in baton and to try to get the baton, say, in 3rd, and to hold off others rather than having to overtake them. So it kind of, you have to take that into account as well. So It's much more tactical than just sort of running flat out for the whole time.
So which one do you prefer?
I think I prefer to chase. So actually for me, my leg was sort of getting the baton in sixth or whatever it was, will actually work well because then I can sort of see people and thought, right, I can judge when I'm going to sort of make my attack and when I'm going to try and overtake. Whereas if you're sort of being the one that's chasing down, you can panic slightly. Because as well, some people look at the big screen, but I sort of can never do that because I sort of think, I'll look at the big screen and be like, where is it? And then I'll be like thinking, oh god, they've overtaken me. So yeah, I prefer to chase people down, I think.
Do you think the crowd like put you off it, or do you just not even care?
To be honest, I didn't. I think you're so focused on your job and your race and your lap that you have to do that you don't really even think about the crowd. Sometimes you can hear it. So if you're sort of coming to overtake people, sometimes that's when they get a bit excited and they start to cheer. And you can notice that. But other than that, you don't sort of really think about it. Or I don't anyway. But yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.